Hi guys, I'm here to read another excerpt from the top 10 ways to ruin the first day of school. So last chapter, Tony had stupid human tricks. This chapter, it's stupid pet tricks. So 2 weeks passed, nothing happened. Mr. Gore didn't have to leave school to change his clothes. Mrs. Hernandez didn't have to call 911, and David Letterman didn't phone Tony. Everything was peaceful until the first day of Pet Week. Kids jabbered excitedly as they entered the classroom and took their seats. The following message was printed neatly on the chalkboard. Dear kids, please remember that this is Pet Week. Let's learn something and have fun with our animals. Your friend, Tom Gore, aka Mr. G, and to a foolish few, Mr. Gorilla. Dean Smith had a snake wrapped around his neck. Dean was the meanest kid in class. Everybody called him Mean Dean the Bully Machine because he was a 5th grade thug. Anna had a tiny black kitten climbing on her head. Casey O'Neill had an empty bird cage on her desk. She was very forgetful. Everybody called her Spacey Casey, which wasn't totally true because she was the only kid in class who could do multiplication problems in her head. And Tony had a fuzzy white Pekingese with a flat face sitting on his lap. His dog looked as if it had run into a brick wall at 60 miles an hour. Quiet class, Mr. Gore said, clapping his hands. Welcome to Pet Week. Mr. G, someone yelled. Mino Dino's face looks like a swollen blueberry. I think his head's going to pop. Mr. Gore walked over to Dean and took a closer look. Yes, I think you're right. He grabbed the snake and slowly unwound it from Dean's neck. It's about time, Mr. Gorilla, said Dean, gasping for air. What took you so long? Mr. Gore said nothing, rolled his eyes, and then wrapped the snake back around Dean's neck. The class cheered. As I was saying, continued Mr. Gore, this week is special. Each of you will share your pet with the class. Today, Anna, Tony, and Casey will share their pets with us, and Dean might if his head doesn't explode. Mr. Gore walked over to a large aquarium that was next to his desk. It was nearly as big as a bathtub. It had no fish in it, but was full of water. And I have a special surprise, he said, tapping the side of the aquarium. Later today, we'll get our own class pets. Anna's mom is bringing us 10 goldfish. The class cheered again. Let's get started. Tony, why don't you go first? Tony carried his white puffball to the front of the room. This is Meatball, said Tony. He's going to make me famous. How? Asked Mike Elway, who had his finger up his nose. Everybody called him Gold Digger because he was a world-class nose picker. Stupid pet tricks, said Tony. What? Mike continued to dig for gold. You know, like on the Late Show with David Letterman. Sometimes people bring their pets on his show to do stupid pet tricks. So, said Mike. So, said Tony, someday Meatball and I will be on the show. Yeah, right. Mike wasn't convinced. Mr. Gore was getting impatient. Let's get started. My assistant will now get our props, said Tony. Mo disappeared into the hallway and returned dragging a miniature trampoline. He placed it halfway between the door and Mr. Gore's desk. Then he pulled 2 bandanas out of his back pocket. Okay, so when I read now, I want you guys to try to visualize what is happening, okay? Visualize it in your head. TB, I don't like the looks of this, Mr. Gore's voice sounded funny. Don't worry, said Tony. Everything's under control. My assistant will explain. Mo bowed before the class. Ladies and gentlemen, you will now see an amazing trick. I will blindfold Meatball. He will run and leap onto the trampoline, flip through the air, and then land in TB's arms. The real trick is that TB will also be blindfolded. Wow, said Anna as her kitten jumped onto Dean's head. Cool, said Mike as he jammed his finger as far as possible up his nose. Beautiful, mumbled Casey as she stared at her empty bird cage. Stupid, gasped Dean as he struggled to free his head from the kitten and the snake. Exactly, said Tony. Stupid pet tricks. David Letterman is really going to love this. I have the feeling that I won't, Mr. Gore folded his arms over his huge chest and then sat on a corner of his desk. Mo blindfolded Tony and stood him next to Mr. Gore's desk facing the trampoline. Then Mo blindfolded Meatball and carried him out into the hallway. He placed the dog on the floor facing the trampoline. Go, said Mo. Meatball raced into the classroom. Jump, said Mo. Meatball leaped into the air, came down, and landed perfectly on the trampoline. He bounced off it and flipped through the air like an Olympic gymnast. Tony waited with open arms. Meatball missed Tony's open arms and sailed into the aquarium like a miniature cannonball. Whoosh! Unfortunately, Mr. Gore, his desk, and the floor all took a direct hit. Nothing was spared. Not again, Tony, Mr. Gore yelled as he hopped off his desk. His feet shot out from under him and he landed with a thud on the wet floor. Nobody made a sound. Not one kid. Not 10 kids. Not any kids. The class just stared at Mr. G. Then Anna broke the spell and ran up to the front of the room. Fantabulous, TB, she said. Thanks. Tony couldn't see her, but he could smell her. She smelled sort of sweet, like baby shampoo. He loved the smell of baby shampoo. His heart beat like a drum and his face turned red. I'm going to get a job at McDonald's, Mr. Gore grunted, propping himself up on one elbow. Flipping burgers has got to be safer. An explosion of voices engulfed the classroom. Will we get free fries? How about milkshakes? I want 1,000,000 cheeseburgers. I want to meet Ronald McDonald. I want to marry Ronald McDonald. Then the Terminator walked into the room. All mouths immediately closed. All heads immediately turned toward Mrs. Hernandez, even Meatball's. I'm dead now, thought Tony as he pulled off his bandana. What's going on in here? Mrs. Hernandez asked. Where's Mr. Gore? I'm down here. It only took Mrs. Hernandez 10 seconds to figure out what was going on. Mr. Gore had to go home and change clothes. Mrs. Hernandez's secretary had to watch Mr. Gore's class. Tony and Mo had to go to the principal's office. Okay, that's it for today. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.